everybody, so today we are going to talk about finishing our ceramic pieces. And I have this one that is completely finished. So you can kind of see all the different colors and the shininess. Whoa, that went really fast. And here's some place where I carved, and so the paint goes into the carvings a little differently. And some just works, different colors have different effects with the paint. So I want to show you how I got here. Right now, our piece is completely stark white. It's very dry, and it wants to absorb any moisture, including the oils from your skin. So for this project, you need to be very careful not to touch it too much while we're working on it. Once we've put that acrylic glaze over it, then it's sealed up and you can touch it and not be so worried. But right now, if it gets too much oils from your fingers or hands, it's not going to want to absorb the rest of the materials. And we also need to be careful because we're going to be using oil pastels for starters, and they can smear. So what I think is going to be best is if we do the front, part 1, oil pastel, part 2, paint, part 3, the acrylic gloss. And once that's dry, then we'll flip it over and do the other side, because you're going to want someplace that's protected that you can hold on to. Now I'm about to take this sideways, and I don't want to hold on to it too much, so I even grabbed a paper towel, kind of like how you grab something hot out of the oven with a pot holder. I'm just using that paper towel to hold it in place. And then you're going to choose what colors you want to put where. So I'm going to start with some pink. Whoops, that's not pink. And I want to cover a good amount of it, but no matter how hard I try, I'm not going to be able to to get into every little groove. And that's fine. That's why we're going to come over it with a part 2 on the color. Now, where you have spaces, like this empty spot here, I can get my oil pastel in there a little bit more. But what you can also see is sometimes when I'm working, the pastel gets onto a different coil. And that's okay. Just know that that can happen and kind of be on the lookout for it. So I'm going to try some pink. I'm going to try some green. And next I'm going to try some white. And the white is very likely not going to show up very well on the pastel. Actually, I can see it more than I thought I would. But for any of you who remember doing a crayon resist when you were younger, the oiliness of the pastel is going to resist the wateriness of the paint, and that white is going to show through in a way that looks intentional, not accidental, like if I just left it blank. I'm going to try a little blue over here. I'm just kind of going in the best that I can. And getting that covered. Now, obviously, I have not done the whole surface, but I'm going to stop here to kind of show you part 2, okay? So, part 1, oil pastel, and you want to do all of the front at once. The next thing I'm going to do is use watercolor paints. These are very different than the acrylic paints we just used for our still life project. These are going to take a lot of water. With the acrylic paints, you wanted to kind of take it easy on the water. But with these, they're going to need a lot. Also, sometimes people will come up and tell me when they see the bottom, they'll be like, my green is empty. But it's not empty. You just need to kind of put the water in and mix it together. You can get into those corners. That's watercolor paints are a really concentrated pigment. So they're a solid at first. Kind of like Kool-Aid powder, or if you ever mix like lemonade or put one of those flavors in your bottled water, you just put in a little bit and it makes a whole lot of flavored water. You just need a little bit of the paint pigment and a whole lot of water here to kind of get the color you're looking for. So I experimented a little bit with similar colors like blue paint on blue pastel, red paint on red pastel, and I also did where I had completely different colors, like one color of pastel and then a different color of paint. That's the effect that I liked more. I have examples of both so you can see them and you can kind of decide what you like. My favorite might not be your favorite, and that's okay. So now I'm coming in with watercolor paint, and I'm trying to paint as neatly as possible, but all of those blank white spaces that were left by my oil pastel are now getting filled in with the watercolor paint. And the clay is so dry, it's gonna like absorb this water super fast too. But I don't wanna rub it because that oil pastel is still exposed and I don't wanna smear it. So I really like how the green looks on the, how the purple looks on the green. So now I'm gonna stick with purple and see what it looks like on top of the light blue. Like I said, I was disappointed with how the same colors looked on top of each other, but my taste might just be more bright and loud and wild. So you might want a more subdued thing, especially when you think about what your piece means to you and what you were trying to represent. Maybe more subdued colors are more appropriate for yours. In my one that I made when I was angry, I used some really fiery colors to kind of try to represent, you know, that heated, angry feeling. But then on the other side, I used some really soothing colors to kind of be a calmer piece. So you really have a lot of choices with that. So when we're painting these, I hope you notice how often I'm dipping into the water. It's a lot because it needs a lot of water. And now I'm going to come in for that white one, the sphere that I colored white, and we're going to see how that looks. I'm coming at it with some blue paint. And the white of the oil pastel is resisting the blue of the paint. And I'm kind of getting my brush in there to work around all those little dips and cracks. And while I'm doing that, a little bit is getting onto that coil that has the pink pastel on it, on the side kind of. But that's okay. You know, it doesn't have to be 100% perfect. We want to make it as neat as possible, but you know, it's okay if some colors overlap other colors. I'm going to try an orange on top of this pink, and after that, I'm going to move on. And sometimes I use a second coat just because it does soak it in so quickly. I feel like the color isn't as bright as I would like it to be. But you, again, might like a more muted color or a more subtle color. And that's okay. This doesn't have the high contrast that I feel that I have in some of those other ones. And I kind of like that. So it's kind of different. Okay, obviously I didn't finish my pastel, and then on top of it, I did not finish my paint. But I want to stop here because I think I've shown you enough so that you can get started. I'm going to roll it over now. Remember, you're just going to do the front half for starters, and then we'll do the back half later. But I did earlier work on this one, and I want to show you a couple of things. One, this part rubbed on my table. I had to because I wanted to show you this side, but while I was doing that, this side rubbed on there and it already took off the pastel. So I want you to remember how important it is to be careful with these until the acrylic gloss is put on. Once the acrylic gloss is on, it's a lot easier to handle and that won't happen, which is why we're going to do the front half and then the back half. So I'm going to try to fix this. Yeah, I'll just leave it because it'll be a good example of what not to do. And I want to show you up here, this is where I did purple on purple, blue on blue, green on green. So it does give it a different effect. I like the more stark contrast, but it's up to you. And now I want to do one more show and tell. You can come up and look at this one that's been glossed anytime you want to see the different color combinations that I've tried. And I also want you to just kind of see how shiny this one is and glossy. And I can touch it and rub on it, and that's not going to come off. So we have to be careful with these until the gloss layer. But after that, they're going to be much more durable. So our clay is really going through a big transformation. It went from being wet and soggy to being super dry and brittle to being super dry and strong. And now we're going to seal it up, and so the surface will be protected after we are done working on it. So I'm going to stop there and let you guys get started.